I'm not sure I fully understand what's going on here in this conversation, but it is interesting to look into the minds of someone whose mind has been a little bit scrambled, and then somebody else who's scrambling desperately to regain some type of relevance on the right. I mean, this is a guy, and I want to be fair to Dave Rubin. He had the rug really pulled out from under him. He was completely hoodwinked by Edward Gregorian, and it was in color, this CV that he was given. And, he had that $5 million. Who knows how he spent it? Maybe he still saved it, but still, it's a little bit concerning. Having, twins, he and his husband, I can only imagine, I know the cost of children, and to have it all come at once, he's probably in a little bit of panic. And when was the last time he really felt like his career was on an upswing? It was back when he was touring around with Jordan Peterson. Okay. And so go back to Daddy and see if you can get some of that mojo again. And here they are talking about how important conservatism is to liberalism.
I've come to understand something over the last 8 years that I didn't understand in the beginning, as certainly not as well anyways, is that liberal individualism only works when the collective is so well established that you can take it for granted.
Yes.
So as long as the self-evident truths remain self-evident, then you can have something like a liberal individualism.
So it's basically, as long as the conservatives are holding the door from the barbarians, then the liberals can be liberal.
Exactly that.
And that's how a functional society should work, in essence.
Well, in the story of the
Pause it for
Hobbit
1 second. This is fascinating. And before we get into the Hobbit stuff, maybe we need to even go back a little bit earlier to see this, but what he's describing is why libertarianism can exist, first off.
Yeah.
The organization of society, like what are conservatives keeping at bay at the doors? Like what is it that they are keeping at bay? I know the answer to this. It's obviously transgender people. It's gay people, depending on what year it is, or Muslims, or gender fluidity.
DEI.
DEI. I wonder what it is in their mind that conservatives are keeping. Are we not being attacked by, England, or is he saying we're not being attacked by Russia because of conservatives or China? I'm unclear. Go back a little bit and let's listen to this back down, and then we can go into how, of course, this is best described by what's going on with the Hobbit.
Can I just make a point? The collectivists, the people looking after the collective, are the conservatives? I agree with this. I agree that liberal individualism benefits from, I think, social policy.
Yes, it's completely inverted.
Well, when all this started, and I think it was the same with you, I regarded myself as a classic British liberal, essentially. Yeah. But when I've come to understand something over the last 8 years that I didn't understand in the beginning, as certainly not as well.
So he's saying, I used to be basically a libertarian. I think that's when they say classical liberal, that's what, in their mind, it's basically an American libertarian. And now he's trying to justify his move to the right, to the authoritarian right.
Right.
To really, in many respects, the Straussian right, which is we know better, and we're the parents of everybody.
And
we're setting up the playpen. that allows, like the libertarians in the past. Okay, so that's an important context. It's still as bat crap crazy, just it's a more specifically.
I think he kind of knew it when he was theorizing that maybe the government should provide a woman to single men like years ago. But anyway, he's evolving his theories.
Yeah.
Understand in the beginning, as certainly not as well anyways, is that liberal individualism only works when the collective is so well established that you can take it for granted.
Yes.
So as long as the self-evident truths remain self-evident, then you can have something like a liberal individualism.
So it's
I'm sorry. But notice how he defines the collective, right? He doesn't define the collective as like a community or of people trying to work together, because it's actually better for society if folks are not segmented, right? He describes it essentially as as shared norms, or as like a shared cultural understanding, which is just like looking backwards nostalgically about, oh, when men wore ties and hats and women wore skirts. But that's not what the collective is. The collective is like supposed to be, at least for leftists, is supposed to be something that like we're working towards the common good for everybody in solidarity.
But the irony is also, I would go further than that, because when he says the self-evident is self-evident, he's talking about God's law. I mean, he may not call it God's law. He may call it just like natural law or whatnot. But the irony is that he is saying the collective creates the obvious,
right?
And I mean, it's both a relativist argument on some level, right? Because presumably a different collective could come up with other things that are self-evident. But almost definitionally, self-evident does not need a collective.
Yes.
Because it's self-evident. So what he's talking about is the collective creates the mores.
Yes.
That are the constraints, right? Think of it as like, this is the fence around in which the dogs can run, or the cats can run and not get out of the yard. And he is, in that moment, basically conceding that that's what the collective does. It allows for, and this is why I argue there is no such thing as a free market, because in fact, yes, society essentially sets up these, the playing field. Now, he's going to pretend it's self-evident, but it's not self-evident. It is a choice that is made by a society at any time. And how much that represents the collective is a function of the level of democracy within that choice, and how the power to develop what is self-evident is distributed. And that sometimes can be money, it sometimes can be religious authority, divine right, whatever it is. And so he just sort of glosses all over this. And he says, it was a real luxury. I didn't realize that I could be a heterodox thinker, part of the IDW. I mean, I think this is some like these two justifying why Sam Harris is not friends with them anymore. I could be a heterodox thinker, but it was only because of the conservatives who were creating, morality around and taking care of all of us. But
I just love how the inherent contradiction is that the collective is inherently self-evident and naturally occurring, but also entirely under threat by these crazy liberals as well, right? That's the contradiction in his argument.
Well, let's see where he goes, because he has an interesting metaphor. Because as you know, all intellectuals, all roads come back to a movie movies that are made with a over $80 million budget.
Then you can have something like a liberal individualism.
So it's basically, as long as the conservatives are holding the door from the barbarian, then the liberals can be liberal.
Exactly that.
And that's how a functional society should work, in essence.
Well, in the story of the Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings, so the Shire is full of, well, let's call them liberals. Right? And they're
smoking some stuff.
They're hobbits, and they're all pursuing their own thing.
Pause it for 1 second. I say the movie because I will tell you something. I will bet everything I own that David Rubin never read a single one of those books. that everything he knows about The Hobbit is from the movie?
I'd be surprised if JP has, frankly. I think he's a big charlatan in terms of literacy, too.
I mean, the idea that now they're still using pot smoking as some substitute for liberalism. I mean, guys, we see you on the Joe Rogan Experience. Can you quit with this facade at this point? Why are they? What? Because they're hippies? I mean, sort of, right?
All the people in Middle Earth are on tea.
He wants to make a point about natural collectives. So let's talk about the book The Hobbit, which came out, in the early 20th century?
I'm curious about the what's happening in the Shire.
Smoking some stuff.
Yeah, they're hobbits, and they're all pursuing their own thing, and they think their little kingdom is everything. But, the borders are protected by the Striders. Aragorn is one of them, and it turns out that he's the descendant of ancient kings. And that's exactly right. It's like, as long as the perimeters are defended by the descendants of ancient kings, then there can be freedom inside the walls. And so, I've been criticized, the more public books I've written have been criticized for, what would you say, making a case out of the self-evident. But we are at a point where the self-evident is no longer self-evident and needs to be explained and defended. And that's actually, what would you say, that's what's turned me into a conservative to the degree that I am a conservative. It's like, well, all these things that are self-evident have to be restated and also explained.
Right. You wouldn't have had to have written 12 Rules for Life had the system been operating properly.
Right.
That's the point. You would think.
If it is self-evident, why do you have to write books about it? You stupid idiots! Right? If it's self-evident,
here's the thing. He's trying to substitute. Self-evident is really about some type of right-wing moral code that he thinks, again, is like natural law or God's law, but he can't say that because then it gives away the game. So he pretends it's self-evident, even though it self-evidently is not self-evident, because if it were, you would not need to even discuss it or, hold
make
the
a
doors.
case
or you could maybe
self-evident.
Maybe reference the real world instead of the Striders that go around.
I need to use nice try, Matt. But I need to use a metaphor from a movie because if I were to actually explain what is self-evident, that being, of course, that men are men and women are women, and they should be in the kitchen, and all this gender fluidity is a problem. You'll recall I was attempted to be lynched in Canada because of pronouns and forced on a completely meat exclusive diet to regain from my benzo binging
and coma.
Listen, the point is that if I use real world examples about what is self-evident, then, of course, I might have to actually address a specific criticism as to whether it's self-evident. But if I talk about the Shire and the Hobbits, sort of like little liberals who are all high and gender bending, can you tell the difference between a male Hobbit and a female Hobbit? No.
He's the son of kings.
He's a son of kings, protected them all. Therefore, I am in favor of a king. So, ipso facto, and look at me. You have no idea how much I have to, how much I want to reach for the bottle of benzos when I'm looking at Dave Rubin and he's pretending like he understands what I'm saying.
Yeah, we need Donald Trump Jr. in a jet fighter patrolling the skies. I just want to make something that I think is self-evident. Jordan Peterson is not actually literate. There's the debate he had with Slavoj Žižek where he proved that he, despite debating the Communist Manifesto, which is like a 3-page, maybe it's longer than that, it's about 3 pages, he hadn't really even read that. prior to talking with Zizek, and he definitely hadn't read
The Wikipedia on it is quite comprehensive.
But it's not just Marx. I was doing a literary hangover on Pilgrim's Progress by John Bunyan years ago, and I wanted to see what Jordan Peterson had to say about that. And you can Google it, Jordan Peterson, Pilgrim's Progress, and it's, again, the most surface level bullshit. And I feel so sorry for people who consume hours and hours of this content, of this guy's content, to simulate some kind of thought process. There is nothing to this guy. He is an absolute...
Well, wait a second. Max in Oakland writes, Aragon's incognito name was Strider. JP never read the books. The Rangers protected the wilds of Middle-earth, and Aragon Strider was one of them. He was only a descendant from ancient kings.
Yes.
And then Trees and Water says, and had nothing to do with protecting the Shire.
Yes, no, that's
Everybody's saying that he hasn't even read
established in the Fellowship of the Ring in the movie, but whatever.
He doesn't read.
He's not part of the Striders. Okay, look, this is all very well and good, but it's obviously, for me, it's self-evident. So, all right, continue on. This is just amazing. And of course, Rubin, of course, has no idea what he's talking about, so he can't really respond.
Because this is a dumb guy's idea of a smart guy.
Exactly.
No. This is a dumb guy's idea of a dumb guy's idea of a smart guy.
Restated.
Twice removed!
Well, all these things that are self-evident have to be restated and also explained.
Right. You wouldn't have had to have written 12 rules for life had the system been operating properly.
Right.
That's the point.
It would have been
You
unnecessary.
would think in the year 2000, when you wrote it, 2017, 16, whatever it was, that had the world actually been operating as it should have with all the advancements of humanity, it would not be necessary to say things that are just, why would you
Put
pet a
your
cat
rule
when
in
you walk by
perfect
it? Well,
order.
there's a
Yeah.
reason. There's actually a reason. You remember wait, I'll tell you a funny story in a sec, but Douglas,
Oh, I doubt that.
the line on this about the walls that Douglas has that I love this, and he said this years ago, was that one day the barbarians will be at the gate and we'll be debating what gender pronouns to call them. And I think that's what happened to the liberals. They saw the chaos, and instead of confronting it as the conservatives, and we can do the conservative version of this where their weak spots are too, obviously, but instead of confronting what was going on, how good they had it, they decided to just, we'll let the crazy people just keep running around, and then, the guys trying to hold the door, and we'll just...
Who are the barbarians, and are they a part of the collective? What is the collective?
We
Or are
already
the
know.
barbarians
Okay,
outside?
gay guys get
you
an
don't
idea.
get it because you're a girl.
Yeah, I'm not in the
But
collective.
you're not part of the collective because you don't know what's self-evident. The barbarians in this instance, like I said from the beginning, are the transgenders.
Okay, not in the
What about gay
collective.
guys having surgery?
And gay guys also, except for
this one, present company?
unless they're understated, unless they don't bring it up all the time.
Don't shove it down my throat.
Don't shove it down my throat. Okay, so let's recap. I had to write 12 rules for the world.
He was compelled to do so.
I had to because liberals had ruined the Shire because they were high all the time and hanging out with the transgenders.
Can I give you these 12 rules? Stand up straight, treat yourself, compare yourself to who you were, set your house in perfect order before you criticize the world. I wonder if Jordan Peterson's done that.
I have, yes, mostly
Certain governing bodies,
78%.
psychiatric, professional accrediting boards for psychiatry in Canada disagree, but whatever. Pursue what is meaningful. Pet a cat. I mean, you need.
Oh, yes, that's important. Oh, yes.
Make friends with people who want the best for you. Tell the truth, or at least don't lie. I mean, these are just very important things.
Shucks
that
a shame.
needed
I
was
didn't,
said.
if it wasn't for all the liberals who are walking around with the transgender stuff, I wouldn't have had to tell people to be friends with people who are good to you.
Here's one I think he missed up because, of course, he got disbarred by calling, who was it? Elliot Page's doctor a criminal butcher. One of his lessons was be precise in your speech. So, oops.
Well, self-evident being self-evident is no longer self-evident.
Criminal butcher, both words incorrect on there, and that's why you are officially, not credible. Do not bother children when they are skateboarding. That's funny. Do not let children do anything that makes you dislike them. So just important stuff there.
All right.
Millions of dollars.
We've gone way long. Sorry about that, folks. We got a little carried away. That sound indicates that we will be taking no more phone calls. And
that sound should be self-evident.
That sound is self-evident. If you don't know what it means, you are outside of the gates.
Barbarians!
With the barbarians, and we're just going to call you they, them, z, she, whatever. Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.